This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick Gilchrist. I'm the meteorologist in charge for the National Weather Service in Glasgow, Montana. This is your drought and climate ready briefing for Eastern Montana. Today is October 21st. Information contained in this briefing is current as of that date. So let's look back at our temperature recap for the month of September. You can see that out of 128 years of records, Montana finished 126th warmest during that time frame. So again, much above average temperature wise, and you can see that with the breakdown by county on the right side of your screen here. It's definitely from border to border, Idaho to North Dakota, from Canada to Wyoming. It's was much above average in all counties finishing that way. You can see that even a couple of states, Nevada and Utah, had their all-time warmest month of September during that time frame as well. So again, very warm across the western U.S. You can see much of the southern and Ohio River Valley country of the U.S. Finishing near average temperature-wise, but otherwise, very much on the warm side for the month of September. Look at our current month, which is October. You can see this is the first 20 days of October that we are finishing again, leaning towards warmer temperature-wise. You can see that there is no green showing up on this screen, green or blue, and everything being in the yellow, orange and red, that we are anywhere from 0 to upwards of 6+ degrees above normal. So again, we've continued that warm trend into the month of October, and honestly, it sure has not felt much like fall out there. It's been very warm, very pleasant, but of course the dry conditions come at a price. We'll talk a little bit about that. So a month of September precipitation wise, again, when you average it out across the entire state, we're looking at near average precipitation totals. However, when you break it down by county, that really tells the story that the whole northern tier of Montana, from northwest Montana over the Continental Divide, and then getting into eastern Montana, far northeast Montana, finishing below average on the county level. As you can see, that portions of southern Montana, west central Montana, finishing near average, even above average, kind of skewing some of those numbers. So, when you average out all the counties, it finishes near average, but you can see there's a big story between the haves and the have-not precipitation-wise for September has been really the story for the year of 2022, that there's been a big difference between those who get precipitation and those who haven't. So look at our current month trends. You can see a couple of areas in eastern Montana, far northeast Montana, did get a little bit of precipitation during that time frame. You can see they're in the green there, which means that we're above average precip. Of course, this is not enough to overcome the overall effects of the drought that's been so prevalent here over the last 2 years. But you can see again a little bit of a spattering there, where areas in south central Montana and far north central Montana, finishing on the dry side. So again, very much a mixed bag so far for the month of October. Again, we haven't seen what we would normally expect for the fall time frame, especially in that September into early October. We would expect a big low pressure system to bring a widespread precipitation event to much of the state, and we just have not seen that. We've been very much warm, very much dry, very much dominated by an upper level ridge of high pressure, and just have not seen what we would normally expect during this time frame for precipitation and temperatures. Of course, that's going to change a little bit, and we'll talk about that here shortly. But year to date, looking at the year 2022, you can see that 107th out of 128 years. So we are very much on the warm side there, above average for the state, and you can break it down by county as well, finishing almost exclusively above average with a couple of counties there in far north central, northwest Montana, finishing much above average. So again, it's been very warm. I don't think that'll come as a surprise to anybody. But on the precip side, again, this is, of course, where things get skewed when we break it down by state. We're finishing near average, but we all know that that's not the case. You got to break it down by county. Again, Montana being a very large state, you can see that for the most part below average precipitation ruling from southwest Montana up to north central Montana, down the High Line, following the Missouri River into northeast Montana, again finishing below average precipitation wise. Of course, you get down into southeast Montana, a couple of counties finishing above average. They did have a fairly wet spring time frame and have gotten a little bit of precipitation, but Of course, the trouble with some of these precipitation events that we've seen is that it all comes at once, and then we have these extended dry periods. So again, we take what we get, but it has not definitely been an ideal precipitation event by any means for most areas this year. Looking at the snapshot, specifically Glasgow and Billings, this is the automated observing stations at the airport. These are the official OBS for each location. And it really shows the difference between the haves and the have-nots, right? South central Montana has been getting precipitation. You can see Billings here finishing 107% of normal. You can see that they have been getting precipitation events, but they have had several extended dry periods where they were, haven't seen much, especially that mid-July into September, through the month of August, again, fairly dry, but a couple of substantial events there, and they're right at 107% of normal. They're doing pretty good. Glasgow, on the other hand, you can see that really since about the second week of July, we've been kind of flatline. A couple of, one good precipitation event here at the beginning of this month, but a lot of flatline in there, and you can see that we're only 67% of normal, only received about 2/3 of normal precipitation. We're over 4 inches behind on the year, and I can attest that it has been a very destructive period. Over the last 2 years in Glasgow here, things are very dry, very dusty. Definitely feeling the impacts of some major drought that has been plaguing us here now for a couple of years. And that brings us to our drought monitor as well. You can see that again, that highline region, portions of north central Montana all the way down into Valley County and western Roosevelt counties. There, you're seeing those D3 extreme drought conditions, which is the strongest drought that we have out there as of now, is that we're in that D3 category. And you can see that a good chunk of Montana from southwest, also over into eastern Montana, seeing that D2 severe drought. Again, that south central portion has been doing the best, that Billings area, where they're seeing either no drought or just seeing abnormally dry conditions. When we hop over to North Dakota, if you remember North Dakota earlier this year in the spring, they had really gotten out of the drought. Looks like now that the drought has returned. If you remember that they had just a little bit of drought lingering in far western North Dakota with some of their good spring precipitation, but now you can see that all the way into eastern North Dakota. They're seeing those D1 moderate drought extending into the Red River Valley, some pockets of D2 severe drought as well, including right along the Montana border, matching up well with what Montana's seeing for the drought conditions. So again, even though we had a little bit of a tease there earlier this year, it looks like that drought conditions are here and very prevalent and widespread for Montana and North Dakota. This is the good news. If there's a silver lining to be had, is that we are right now on the cusp of a pretty substantial fall weather system. Big, nice low pressure center is going to impact the region here into the weekend. Looks like we're going to see some substantial amounts of precipitation, including totals, expected upwards of 1 inch plus for much of the region. You can see this is going to be one of those big low pressure systems that we would normally expect in the fall. Big closed lows. Again, much needed precipitation. We're very grateful for this. But on the flip side, any hunters or anybody planning on getting outdoors, especially for hunting this weekend, or should be planning for some muddy roads. As we all know, out here in eastern Montana, some of those roads can get pretty treacherous when they get wet. And it looks like with this substantial amount of precipitation, that might be a change that I would be planning for if you're looking at venturing out. Beyond this, precipitation looks to last into Monday. Now, Tuesday into next week, looks like we remain cooler. It's going to feel a lot more fall-like. We really are feeling the effect of those cooler temperatures. And conditions are going to start to dry out as well, at least in that, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of next week. Things should start to trend towards cooler and dry conditions. Also want to talk about snow potential here. This is something that's very important with this short-term system here. It's not going to all come as rain. It looks like some snow could mix in, especially later as we get towards Sunday and even into early Monday timeframe. And this is a 72-hour probability, this graphic here, of getting greater than 2 inches of snowfall. And you can see that mountains in western Montana into central Montana, it's pretty much a slam dunk that a lot of those areas are going to see 2+ inches. They're going to see mountain snowfall. In Little Rockies looks like better than 70% chance of seeing a couple of inches of snowfall. But what I want to point out here is that Opime all the way through Plentywood and Westby into the North Dakota border areas, north of Fraser, Wolf Point. It looks like they are targeted for, some good chances to see some snowfall, 2 inches or so, and even down into the Big Sheep Mountains in far eastern Montana. It looks like there's some decent potential there to see some accumulating snowfall. Now, this is the first snowfall of the year, so we always think that that's going to be a little bit more on the impactful side because we haven't seen it recently, right? We got to get back into the swing of winter driving. We got to get back into the swing of having to deal with what snowfall means. And of course, mixed with muddy roads, it could get a little bit messy. But just be on the lookout here that we could see a little bit of a light accumulating snow. And of course, this will be a heavy, wet snow, but light accumulations is in a couple of inches, maybe even a couple spots a little bit higher. But just be ready for that, and of course, be careful if we haven't been exercising lately. We do call this heart attack snow because it is so heavy and takes a lot to move it. So just be careful out there as we have a change on the horizon. 8 to 14-day outlook. This is looking into early November. This is getting out beyond the 7-day forecast here. It looks like we are going to see a return to better chances for warmer temperatures across eastern Montana. So it looks like we might get a little bit of a return to warmer temperatures, but that normal or near normal type precipitation looks to linger as well. So that's, again, some good news that we're not favoring dry conditions. Maybe we can start to turn the corner a little bit on this drought. Now, looking at the overall outlook for the drought, this takes us through the month of January of 2023, and you can see that, unfortunately for much of eastern Montana and northern portions of Montana, not expecting much change in the overall drought picture. This is just keep this in mind as we go forward here. But looks like south central Montana is going to remain in good shape, but that eastern Montana and northern tier of Montana drought is not expected to make any changes. Do anticipate, though, that there's going to be some improvement across western Montana, which is, again, of course, good news for them. But for those of us in the east and specifically northeast, it's not looking like we're going to be seeing much in the way of improving conditions here, at least through the early part of the year. Looking at the month of November outlook now, you can see that we do start to see this above normal chances for precipitation starting to nose into the northern Rockies, across the Continental Divide, and into portions of eastern Montana. So it looks like we could start to favor maybe a little bit more wetter type conditions with, of course, equal chances or more normal precipitation across far eastern Montana. But on the temperature side, again, more normal temperatures expected. But then as we turn the corner here into the winter outlook, this is the official winter outlook, December, January, and February, looking for better chances for cool temperatures and above normal precipitation. Now, this is hinging upon the La Nina conditions that are expected. Now, there's a lot of caveats that come with a La Nina. That is the cooling of the ocean temperatures off the coast of South America and the equatorial Pacific. And that does have a pretty substantial influence on our weather, but the La Nina signature is not a slam dunk. Now, this is what's favored. If you play the odds here, we favor below normal temperatures and above normal chances for precipitation. But as we've seen here, very much on the recent side, including the last 2 years, the previous 2 years, we saw La Nina winters, and we did not see those cooler and wetter conditions prevailing. What we did see was the opposite of that, warmer and drier conditions, which of course has not helped our overall drought picture as well. So with that in mind, let's take a look at this. And this is a courtesy of Brett Schneider. He's an Alaska climatologist, but he went through and kind of charted all of the La Nina winters and what the impacts were. And this is looking at temperatures. And you can see that there are, while favoring more cooler conditions with the La Nina, there are standouts in here as well with warmer type temperatures, and including the most recent 2 winters that we've seen. So just keep in mind that while the odds favor these cooler and wetter conditions, it's definitely not a guarantee. And this is on the precipitation side as well. And you can see that while there is a lot more periods with these La Nina winters with wetter conditions, there are some notable periods, though, where we did see those drier conditions. So I guess it remains to be seen what we see with these winter months. But let's keep our fingers crossed. Part of me feels like we're kind of due for a good winter here. So we'll see if that pans out. Of course, there's no science behind that. It's just my feeling. But hopefully Mother Nature can turn us around a little bit from this drought and provide some much needed precipitation. So the spring outlook, looking even further out, looking at March, April, May, some of you may be thinking about, what planting season is going to bring and what the conditions could be. And so I thought I'd provide the latest outlook. And right now it looks like we're going to largely continue with those cooler temperatures favored, of course, for the northern tier of Montana, maybe more normal temperatures across southern Montana, but return to more equal chances for eastern Montana on the precipitation side, so more normal precipitation. So maybe a little bit cooler for a lot of the area and with more normal precipitation for the spring. So that concludes our Climate Ready monthly briefing for Eastern Montana. Next briefing will be on or around November 17th, 2022. Thank you for attending.